Hi, welcome back to another vinyl show and tell. Hope we're all doing okay. Thank you for tuning in. So today's video I wanted to do a run of albums that I feel that are by major recording artists, or at least I would deem them as major recording artists. These are albums that I feel are completely underrated, off the radar, or in some cases really get negative review or panned for no good reason. So I always champion the underdogs, so I just wanted to sort of put these albums forward because I really love each and every one of them. In some cases they are actually my favourite albums by each of these artists, so I just feel they deserve a bit of love. So here we go. These are in rough chronological order, by the way. I've tried to do them by year. So first off we have The Soft Parade by The Doors. So this particular one, in my opinion, seems to get a lot of negative reviews in general. I know it certainly wasn't popular at the time. It is quite a departure from their previous three albums. It features a lot of strings and a brass section as well, and is I don't know how you describe it. It's certainly not really psychedelic. But they're just trying something different. As we all know, not everyone likes that. To my mind though, I think the results are absolutely brilliant. There are some fantastic tracks on here. The only real well-known track I'd say is Touch Me, which was, I believe, was a single release. That's certainly on all the greatest hits. But you've also got Shaman's Blues, Wild Child, Wishful Sinful. I think it works really brilliantly, and I have to say Jim Morrison, he croons all the way through this record. His vocals are absolutely fantastic. The track that I just mentioned, Wishful Sinful, has got an amazing orchestral backing. It just sounds so good. Also of note is the final track, called The Soft Parade, the title track. When it comes to lengthy album closers with The Doors, everyone seems to think of things like The End, When the Music's Over, Riders on the Storm, which are all absolutely brilliant. But this one, which is just under the 9-minute mark, is also absolutely fantastic. It's a kind of multi-part suite, if you like. It goes through all sorts of different movements and is quite dark, most of it. It just works brilliantly. This is such a good record. I have to say, I don't know if this is my favourite. When it comes to the 6 Morrison albums, I don't know which is my favourite. I think they're all consistently good. This is highly recommended. I mean, this particular one here, it's just a run-of-your-mill mid-70s press on Elektra with the butterfly labels, but it sounds absolutely fantastic, plays beautifully, so it does for me. Absolutely brilliant. Right, next one we've got Goodbye by Cream, or if you like it could be called, also known as Goodbye Cream. Now, they are a major recording artist, I think, even though they only existed for about 2 years. They had such a huge influence on rock music in general, and were, possibly one of the first, if not the first supergroup. I think this deserves a mention. I do feel that the album, the earlier albums, Disraeli Gears and Fresh Cream, kind of steal the limelight, and they're brilliant albums, don't get me wrong, but this one is just fantastic. What you have to remember about Cream is that there were two totally different sides to them. They were a great studio band, but their live performances were something else. And this has the best of both worlds. It's half live, half studio. When they played live, there was tons of improvisation. They would take their studio tracks and stretch them out, sometimes going on to sort of 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes long. Amazing performances from all band members. They're all, well, yeah, that's why they're called Cream. They're all, they're all virtuosos basically. But this particular one, which was released after they split up, captures three of their live performances so brilliantly. Jack Bruce in particular on bass, his bass playing is just incredible. It's really at the forefront in this mix. His vocals are tremendous, and then it is followed by just 3 studio tracks. One of each of them were written by each of the band members, and I just think all 3 of them are probably the best studio tracks they may have done. I really do think that. Badge by Eric Clapton, co-written by George Harrison. Doing That Scrapyard Thing, Jack Bruce's one. And What a Bring Down by Ginger Baker. This clocks in at barely half an hour, but it just smacks you in the face. The opening track, I'm So Glad, which is not over 9 minutes long, is just a wonderful live rendition. The band are on absolute fire, and the live performance is so well recorded. So again, I don't think this gets talked about enough, and I love it. It is my favourite by Cream, without a doubt. Highly recommended yet again. Right, next up we have Yes, Time the Word. Excuse the little post-it note. I have decided it's early days for me on YouTube, so I didn't want to offend anyone or get into trouble with YouTube, so I have covered up the rude bits on this. Anyway, this is Yes's second album. They were still quite unknowns at the time. Their next album, called the Yes Album, they kind of broke through. Certainly they broke through in the UK. The subsequent albums, Fragile and Close to the Edge, then broke them through into America, and they became the prog rock superstars that we all know and love. This one, however, really doesn't get talked about enough, and doesn't get the love that it deserves. Bit like the Doors, they've got a lot of string accompaniments on this one. It wasn't popular with everyone in the band. Indeed, guitarist Peter Banks left because of this, because he felt his guitar parts were being taken over. However, it really works. The strings and occasional brass do not dominate anything. This is a band still really developing their sound, but on this one they just the kind of intricate melodies and things that Yes are known for are not quite there yet. They just know how to jam and rock out, and there's some amazing instrumental passages. I just mentioned the guitarist Peter Banks there. I'm a lover of Steve Howe, the guitarist that replaced him, but Peter Banks' guitar work on this is absolutely superb. It really is a shame he didn't go to more sort of prominence after he left, because his guitar work is absolutely fantastic on this. There are some brilliant tunes. The standout one for me would be Every Days, which is a Buffalo Springfield cover. When I first ever got this record, I'd never heard the Buffalo Springfield cover. I've only actually heard it recently, if I'm honest with you. But on this particular one, there's just an instrumental section in the middle of it, and the band are on absolute fire. This might be my favourite Yes record, to be honest with you. It really is brilliant. It's a nice early pressing on the Plum and Orange label, UK Press. So yeah, a brilliant one. If you haven't got it and you like Yes, get it. Or even if you're not into Yes yet, it's a great one to start with. So next up, we have got Jimi Hendrix, Cry of Love. So this one is, I believe, the first one to be released after Jimi Hendrix passed away. As I understand it, these are all tracks that were kind of almost finished or completed before we lost him, all back in 1970. Following this one, there was an absolute avalanche of other releases of unfinished works, and as they all got released, they just got worse and worse and worse. The quality definitely went downhill. However, this one is absolutely brilliant. I always think it is such a shame. Of course, it's a shame that we sort of lost him so early on. You know, what a talent. But this album, to me, kind of demonstrates the direction he was going in, and just the way his music was developing. It's a lot more funky, bluesy, bit heavier, in my view, than the earlier albums, which again are all great. I love Axis Boulder's Love, things like that. They are absolutely great. But this showed a new direction for Hendrix, and I think it's a great direction. It was so well produced, and it sort of demonstrates what we could have had he lived on, you know, for goodness knows how many years. I mean, the circumstances of his death shrouded in mystery, really. I've seen some documentaries on it recently, and there sounds there's a lot of theories and suspicions about how he died, but I'm not going to go into that here. But anyway, this comes highly recommended, and this is my favourite Hendrix album. I don't know anyone else who thinks this is the best one, but this is mine. Highly recommended. Cry of Love. Absolutely fantastic stuff. This one. Pink Floyd, Obscured by Clouds from 1972. This one frustrates the hell out of me, because this album is one of my favourite albums ever. It's certainly at the moment my favourite album by Pink Floyd, who I've loved for years, but this particular one is absolutely fantastic. So they were commissioned to do a film soundtrack to a film called La Vallée, which I've never watched, never seen it. It was recorded in 1972 over a very short period, and as I understand, it was actually recorded during the making and development of Dark Side of the Moon, which is the album that followed, an album I'm sure most of you have heard of. It's so overlooked. I've spoken to Pink Floyd fans who don't even know this album exists, and it is absolutely brilliant. Unusually for a film soundtrack, it is actually probably the most commercial thing they ever did. It's very kind of song orientated. There's no kind of lengthy workouts or anything like that. It's just a lot of great kind of ballads, rock, pop songs. And there's not a duff track on the album. There really isn't. Dave Gilmour's guitar on this, it could be some of the best sort of solos he's ever done. He is absolutely phenomenal on it. It's just so unfortunate that when this came out, with Dark Side of the Moon that followed it, I do think that Dark Side probably swallowed it up. It just faded it into obscurity a little bit, and it's just such a shame, because it is just again just a criminally overlooked record. It's absolutely brilliant. I saw a post recently on social media. Someone basically said, "Oh, Pink Floyd, the perfect 5 run of albums: Medal, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall." And I just read it and I was like, hello! So yeah, I don't know what more I can say about this one. It is it's a fantastic record. If you're a Pink Floyd fan and haven't got it, do yourself a favour, just seek it out immediately. It's easy to get, it's been reissued, and if you're not a Pink Floyd fan, still a good one to start with. Up next, right, I was debating whether to put this one in. This is Black Sabbath, Sabotage. Now, I was kind of debating whether really this does get the love or not, and I'm like, do you know what, it really, really doesn't. I do feel when Sabbath are talked about, everyone seems to go for their first 5 albums, all the ones up to the one before this, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. This record is just phenomenal. It was written and recorded during a turbulent time for the band. They were having massive legal problems to get out of the contract with their manager at the time. This is reflected in the final track called The Writ. And the anger and frustration just comes through hugely on this record. I've always said Ozzy doesn't sing on this record at all. He screams all the way through. His voice is absolutely full of rage. I would say certainly out of all the Ozzy albums, this is the heaviest one they did, without a doubt. It's not my favourite one, it's probably the second favourite. My favourite is their debut album, which is probably one of my favourite albums of all time, to be honest with you. But this one is criminally overlooked. It just doesn't get the love it deserves. Every single track on there seems to be sort of like 2 tracks in one. It kind of starts at one point and then finishes at another, and then has a bridge in the middle. Very, very cleverly done. It works so well. So there we go. Black Sabbath, Sabotage. Don't be put off by the cover. That's a story on its own, how bad that was. Right, fast forward to the 80s. So here we go. We've got some Neil Young now with his album Trans. Now, I've got a fair few Neil Young records. There are certainly loads that I haven't got. I mean, his back catalogue is enormous, isn't it? I mean, it must be. I mean, he must have more than 40 albums. He must do. But I got hold of this, just bought it on a whim really. It was a reasonable price. I have read many reviews that people don't like it. The band he worked with didn't like it. His new record company, Geffen Records, hated it. They were not happy with him because he presented something that was so different. This record is largely electronic. I would say it falls into the category really of synth pop, new wave and post-punk. Being a lover of all of those, this just ticks all the boxes for me. It is so far removed from everything he's done up to now. I mean, if you listen to an album like Harvest, which is one of his most popular and certainly one of his huge sellers, this just sounds so different. Majority of the tracks are sung through a vocoder, so he's got like a computer effect going on. And he just has a real kind of jagged guitar backing, lots of electronics. As I say, it really does fit into the post-punk and synth pop thing. And for someone like Neil Young, who doesn't do stuff like that, it just works. I don't think he actually intended for it to be in that category. I believe it was recorded like this because he wanted to communicate with his young son who had health problems at the time. But it does just kind of have that feel of an early 80s synth pop new wave record. But in a way I can kind of understand why Neil Young fans wouldn't like it. It is just so different. But to me, it is absolutely fantastic. As soon as I put this on, which I got it a few years ago, I fell in love with it instantly, and it's been a regular play ever since. So do check it out if you haven't already. Right, excuse me, feel my voice going. Right, that's better. Okay, sticking with the 80s, we've got one of my favourite artists, Joe Jackson, with Mike's Murder. This is another film soundtrack. So, Joe Jackson, I mean, I belong to several Joe Jackson forums and sort of Facebook things. No one talks about Mike's Murder. No one talks about it. He's always one of these artists, when you look at his back catalogue, it's debatable what really is his best album. I think everyone's got their best. But no one ever talks about this one at all. It seems to have fallen right under the radar. To me, it is one of his absolute best. I would say, underneath Blaze of Glory and Big World, this is the best one. So it's kind of a close third. The tracks on this, I believe side one are leftovers from the album before Night and Day. And they're easily as good as anything on Night and Day. They are fantastic tracks, brilliantly recorded, brilliantly performed. While side two is all instrumental and actually does have more of a kind of ambient kind of film soundtrack feel to it. I'm not actually too sure how much of this material made it onto the film Mike's Murder. Again, I haven't seen the film at all. I don't believe much ended up on it at all. But it's just such a shame. I mean, considering this cost me £2 a few years ago at a record fair in Southampton, and it's the only copy I've ever seen. So not only is it sort of not very well known, it seems to be a bit of a rarity. I mean, I see Joe Jackson albums all the time. But I never see this one for sale, never. What's also great about this one is the sonics on it are amazing. As a kind of high, if you've got a good hi-fi, it sounds brilliant. The music just leaps from the speakers. So the mastering and pressing on this, which is just a regular UK first pressing on A&M, it's astonishing. So yeah, another one for you, highly recommended. I'm going to say that after every one. Alright, here we go. Killing Joke. Not known by everyone, but I think they've done enough albums and been been around long enough for me to call them a major recording artist. This one's Behind the Gate. No, it's not. It's called Outside the Gate. What am I talking about? It's Outside the Gate. So, I like Killing Joke. I've got a good few of their albums, the earlier ones to this. I really only bought this record because there was a different album that came up on Discogs, and the seller had this cheap, so I thought I'd just whack it in the basket with it, save on postage. I looked this up on a site called Rate Your Music, which I really shouldn't use. It's a bit like TripAdvisor for music, and the album gets absolutely rinsed on there. I mean, people hate this record. So I had it sitting in the spare room for a few years before I finally dug it out and gave it a spin, because I was going for a bit of a Killing Joke kick, and it is absolutely fantastic. Admittedly, the band were not in a good place at the time. There's only 2 original members on it. It really should be a solo album for the main man on here. But when I put it on, yes, it's a bit more synth heavy than their previous efforts, a few less guitars, but it's still got the Killing Joke sound. It's not overly polished, overly cheesy, overly corny. It works really, really well. Killing Joke have got what I'd call a sort of quite a menacing sound to them, and I still think this retains that sound. It's probably just a little bit more easy on the ear, but I think it's absolutely great. It's a really great late 80s record. Very, very dramatic in places. Sometimes it reminds me of Violator by Depeche Mode, which is a great thing, because that's a fantastic record. But why it gets rinsed so heavily and so much scorn and hate towards it, I just can't understand. It's just not that bad at all. So yeah, if you like Killing Joke and have been put off by this record, don't be put off. It is absolutely wonderful. It sounds brilliant, and I can't recommend it enough. And now the final one, fast forwarding a good few years, this is to 99. So this is Supergrass's self-titled 3rd album. So when it comes to Supergrass, whenever I speak to them, because a lot of my friends like Supergrass, they liked Supergrass back in the day. Admittedly, I liked them back in the day, but I was too busy trying to collect Frank Zappa and Van der Graaf Generator records when they were around. But when I speak about Supergrass to my friends, it just seems to them that their career stops on their 2nd album, We're In It For The Money, which is better than I Should Coco. And when I kind of say, well, hang on, what about the ones that followed? I don't really get anything. People don't really know about it. This particular one, I think, is their best album. Again, I don't think it was that critically acclaimed at the time, but to my ears, it's the best thing they've ever done. I think their music had really matured. It's quite straightforward, really. There's not a lot of huge variety on here or anything, but it just works. It's as simple as that. What's great about it is that this album's been reissued again recently, so I'm hoping more people hear of it. I'm lucky enough to have an original here. This was bought years and years ago, before whole in late sort of mid-90s Indian Britpop price thing went through the roof. So yeah, what can I say? Highly recommended. So that's all I've got for you. There will be more videos to follow. If you like what you see, please hit the like button. Please check out my other videos. There are a few in the backlog now. It would be great if you could comment if you agree with any of these, or have any other suggestions of albums that you feel that fit this bill. Please let me know. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell icon if you want more content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video soon. Bye bye.